Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast where we get together to talk about everything going on in the world of video games from the perspective of gamers. I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by my co-host, Adam, at CS Radical, and Chris, at Gin and Chris. This week, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, Ubisoft. Everything that's going on with it, the dumpster fire that is Ubisoft, and whether the hate is justified or not for them. If you like that, you want more content, we post episodes every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube and Spotify if you want to see our lovely faces as we do it. On Fridays, we do a little bonus content for the YouTube side. It's our side quest where we talk about just whatever we feel like talking about. This week, we're talking about the golden joysticks. And that's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Mondays, Adam throws a little bit more with a little bit of a show we call Radical Recap. He's shaking his head. Am I all wrong now?
Because it's on Mondays now. The side quest on Mondays.
Oh, that's right. We reverse.
Recaps on Fridays. Because,
See, I'm
putting
gone
stories
for,
from 2 weeks in the future or 2 weeks in the past seems like a really silly idea.
See, I'm gone for 2 weeks, and that's what happens. So, yeah, let's rephrase that. Side quest now is on Mondays, and weekly recap, Radical Recap, is on Fridays. Nailed it.
Good enough.
One other point I want to talk about with you guys, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to be taking a bit of a backseat for the next couple weeks. I've not told you, and you may have noticed in my screen behind me if you're looking, there's a bunch of baby crap behind me, and that's because I'm having a kid in a couple weeks. And so, with that being said, I'm sure I'm going to have lots of sleep and lots of time. And with that being said, I'm going to have to just be taking a bit of a backseat in hosting. I'm going to leave these two guys to take care of you while I'm away. I'll jump back when I have the chance, when I'm not sleep deprived, when I've got some free time. But for the next couple weeks or so, I'm going to leave you guys with these two to host the weekly episodes. Nothing's changing in terms of content. I'm just going to be around a little bit less. So with that, let's just jump into it, guys.
Well, I got a question right off the top then.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have all this. You're gonna not be here, right, for at least a number of weeks.
Yeah.
So surely you'll come back with at least 7 reviews of finished games, right?
Oh, 100%. I anticipate I'm gonna have nothing but free time now that I have 2 kids. It'll be great.
Yeah, don't they just watch each other? Isn't that why people have multiple kids?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's how I was sold on it. At some point, they just take care of it themselves.
I hope whenever you do rejoin the podcast, it's where you've been going 72 hours no sleep, and you just randomly guys, I think I'm ready for the podcast. It's yeah, let's have him on. This is the one.
And
let's bring him back.
You know that moment where in cartoons, a guy is so out of it and he's been gone for 7 days and he comes back, he almost looks like a rat because he's just got hair all frizzled up everywhere.
Dude, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
It's gonna come back all gray.
For some reason, you look like you just came out of a chimney. There's just dirt all around your eyes. You at least have a pet mouse on your shoulder for some reason. You could just call Charles.
Charles the rat.
Better yet, there is no rat. I just talked to Charles, and I see him.
And only you see him. Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. That part.
Yeah, I know we're very excited and everything, but yeah, with just everything that's going on, just taking a back seat because I can't commit to this, and there's a lot going on. So just figure with it being busy, I'll hop in when I can, talk about it when I can. But
I'm sure we have a paternity leave here at the show. You'll have to talk to our
yes,
HR
I'm actually very
though.
excited. I've heard we've got fantastic benefits. The pay is 0, but the benefits are
yeah,
right for.
Yeah, you take your pay, and then you get to multiply that by how many years you've been doing the podcast, and that's how many points you get towards your benefits.
I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but that's a lot. So
that's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you are the longest tenured person on the show.
Yeah.
Awesome. How have you guys been? What have you guys, Chris, I know you were on vacation. Adam, you've been kind of holding down the fort. I imagine you got 15 games that you beat.
I fucking wish. No.
Did you beat a game?
No. Well, no. But
it doesn't count if you quit.
No, actually. No, it's just a game that never truly ends. But you know how when you played Arcade Paradise and you were really sucked into just going around and just doing menial repetitive things over and over again?
I was running a business, thank you.
Yeah, I'll have you know that I found my version of that now. It's called TCG Card Simulator. Or TCG Card Shop Simulator.
Oh, I want that. I was looking at that.
Yeah, I don't even know how many hours I put into it. The stream that I'm running that's got somebody playing it, he's on day 23. I'm on day almost 90. I've been playing a lot.
What a noob.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good 3 months of a business, though. Not a lot of card shops really make it that
it's
long.
not the most accurate simulator. I mean, here's a couple of things that are very inaccurate to what probably happens at an actual like card and hobby shop. There is more than one girl present at most of the times of the day. So that's already a start. People actually come to the counter and buy stuff. So that's also a thing. And it's profitable. So, that's the most unrealistic game I think I've ever seen, but
I also think it's unrealistic that we're watching and some guy's applying for a job at a friendly local game store and he's wearing a jacket.
Right?
Yeah.
Literally, there's like one of the guys who stocks my shelves wears a suit. I don't, but okay.
He just wears
there's a lack of neck beards in this game so far.
Yeah, and they would just apply on Reddit. Like they wouldn't actually apply anywhere else. It would just be a Reddit post.
But yeah, it's honestly like stupid addicting, and I've also, because it's a PC game, I've modded it to Kingdom Come, so it actually is a Pokemon card shop store.
Oh, I'd probably do like
there's
Disney
plenty of
Lorcana or
options. Like, I know
random.
I've seen a Digimon mod. Somebody's done Dragon Ball Z cards. I haven't, honestly, I'm surprised, Chris. I have not seen one for Lorcana yet.
Really?
I'm genuinely surprised.
Well, I'm getting into the modding scene. Here we go.
But yeah, like, and of course it's an early access game, so there's a lot of things that they're still working on. Like, it almost is getting an update like almost every week right now. Like originally,
is that a HEPA air filter?
Yep, but it gets rid of stinky people. So
okay,
people will come with a green
accurate.
cloud around them because obviously it's basically like going to a convention. You just wish you could dual wield friggin' Axe body spray and just start running at people with it. But yeah, you literally can spray them either manually or you get these machines next to the door, and whenever they walk by it,
you spray them manually? Imagine that.
That's the mod I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for somebody to mod it so you can dual wield them. So you just sit there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I see some stinky people outside.
Stinky clouds.
Oh yeah.
There it is. Spray them away.
Like,
but yeah,
spray them yourself.
It's definitely a case of, it's more about just it's a chill, job simulator sort of deal. The big thing is just opening packs and trying to get better cars to sell singles of. It really scratches that itch of like wanting to open a shit ton of packs, but you obviously can't afford it. This is the way to do it without costing money. Screw you, Hearthstone.
I don't know. This. If I learned anything from Scarface, this is not how you do it. You never get high on your own supply. Like,
yeah, no, you can't. You can't.
No.
But no, it's definitely a fun little heat sink. I usually put this on whenever I've got like a podcast or something I want to watch because it's very menial, just chill and do stuff. I make like at least 10 grand a day, which is just insanely unrealistic, but hey, who cares?
I mean, who's to say? None of us have owned a card shop. Maybe it isn't.
That's true. We don't actually know.
And honestly,
you gotta do that money yourself.
There's little tiny things that make it nice. Like they actually do have several different options for currency, so you can actually change this to the cash register as Canadian coins or yen or whatever else. So they actually do a decent job of like keeping it localized for everything. There's a lot of little things like customers will buy absurd amounts of things, even though it makes no sense. Like they'll buy 27 single packs when there's like boxes on the shelf, or they'll buy 7 deck boxes, but like no car. Like you're just sitting there being like, I don't know what you're here for, but I don't want to ask.
They're buying the cards on Amazon and then just coming to get the box.
Yeah. That's probably what's happening.
Yeah, so like apparently I must be literally the best deal in town on deck boxes, and they're driving from miles to get them.
This is very unrealistic because people are just coming in and buying. There's no one just sitting at the counter chatting for 2 hours.
Right?
Yeah, the amount of people that have bought something in this video, it's insane.
I did laugh because there is like in their list of things that they want to actually updates down the road. They say they want to put a difficulty mode in, and my first thought is, what's a difficulty mode that you can't actually make any sales because all customers want to do is just chat you up instead?
It's so that.
You gonna buy something?
Yeah, you're gonna buy something.
But yeah, if you guys are looking just to stretch, it's a very cheap game. I think it's like $16 or something right now on early access on Steam. So it's not going to break your wallet either. So it's a nice chill little thing. I'm kind of glad that I took a crack at it because I'm like, I don't usually play these kinds of games, but I'm kind of a sucker for trading cards, and this is the easiest way for me to do that without having to actually spend money.
This very much gives off like Arcade Paradise vibes.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
The only difference is no good soundtrack. That's the only difference.
I mean, you could probably put your own music on in the background while the game's running. Yeah.
Just put on Game Chops or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart.
Chris, what about yourself? What have you been playing on the road?
So I actually played and beat a game during my vacation.
Ooh.
A new one too, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm so excited to hear
Yeah.
about that.
I loved it. I got to actually play it because even though I was in California, on a trip, yeah, it's a good 11 hours on a plane going there and back, and the game's a little over 15 to 20 hours somewhere in there.
Okay.
So I played a little bit when I'm on vacation, but it's mostly just on the plane. And you can tell this game was so good because usually on a plane, like, I'm kind of a taller guy and stuff like that, and the seats always suck and all that. Literally from takeoff, I was playing the game, and all of a sudden it was just like somebody coming around being like, "Oh, can you got to put your game away. We're landing." And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, Alex, my wife, looked, and she's like, "Yeah, it's been 6 hours. You haven't talked to me once." I was like, "Yeah, no, that seems about right. That seems about right." So the game is very addicting, and also I rolled credits on the game as I was landing back in Toronto, which I thought was pretty impressive.
That's cool.
I literally started and beat the game purely on a vacation, like to the moment, which was pretty crazy. The game itself is really, really, really good. It's a lot of fun. It's very different. So I'm sure there are some people that maybe wouldn't like it because, again, for the most part, you aren't doing any combat yourself. There are ways that you do combat, but it's more about you having this wisdom staff or something. I can't actually remember what it was called. But when you're going around the map, when you find something like a boulder or a rock, they'll be shining, and you can literally learn to actually summon a boulder or summon a rock. And then as you defeat enemies, the first time you defeat one, you actually then have the ability to learn how to summon one of those. And it's just an idea that you have a certain amount of energy and each thing costs a certain amount of points. So you can have that many things on screen at a time. So, for example, you learn pretty early, and you've seen this a lot in trailers, the ability to summon a bed, which has two reasons for summoning. One, if you lay on the bed, you actually slowly heal over time. Every few seconds, you'll get like 1 heart back, which is very convenient in dungeons or places where it's quiet. But also, you can stack the beds and make stairs out of them ridiculously. But you can only, in the beginning of the game, stack 3 because they each cost 1 energy, and you only have 3 energy at the beginning of the game. And then as you go further in the game, obviously you'll discover things that require more energy, but you also get the ability to have more energy. So you can actually get up to when I beat the game, I had up to 6 energy points that I could summon. So I could make a stack of 6 beds, or I could summon this one really good moblin that was 5 energy to call in, but he had a sword and a shield, and he would fight, really well and take out a lot of enemies on the screen kind of idea. So it is interesting because it's more about managing what you want to summon on the screen while also controlling Zelda to get the fuck out of dodge, because if things are attacking her, she can't fight back for the most part. You do get the ability to use a sword, bombs, and bow and arrow in the game, which again they've shown in trailers and all that kind of stuff, so none of this is like a spoiler, but it's that you kind of learn how to summon Link's abilities on yourself using that staff. And in old Zelda games there was like a magic meter, like in Ocarina of Time and stuff like that. You could summon certain magic and stuff. In here, that energy meter is just how long you can use Link's powers. So if you're fighting a boss or you're surrounded by enemies, you can press up on the D-pad and you turn yourself into basically an echo of Link, your girl Link basically, and you can use the sword and shield or fire off your bow and arrow or something, but the energy meter is depleting as you're using it. So it's not something you can always use, but you can pull it out in a pinch, or especially with bosses and stuff like that, when you'll get them stunned and then you'll throw up the girl Link ability and just slash away with a sword kind of idea. The reason this game is so good is it's, as you can tell from the art style and stuff, it's done by the same people that did like the Link's Awakening remake. It's the same art style, it's the same engine, it's the same everything. So it has that like old school Zelda feeling of it being the top down and exploring and doing dungeons, and there's a lot of like choice, like the dungeons kind of slowly open up and you don't have to do them in a specific order. But it's like that old school game with Tears of the Kingdom's open sandbox style, because the amount of crazy shit you can just pull off in this game There is no one way to do stuff. If you're against an enemy and you want to summon 5 snakes to just take that enemy down, you can do that. Do you want to summon a boulder above their head and smash them with it? You can do that. You can summon this cube of water and stack it and then swim up this water tower you just place in the middle of places. You can also just drown enemies in that water by summoning it right on top of where an enemy is standing and they just literally drown and die. There's so much stuff you can do with this. And the internet's already shown many, many ways that people are just cheesing the game, where there's like the big Goron mountain that you're supposed to climb at some point and like get up there and all that kind of stuff. All the things that happen in this game are very stereotypical for Zelda games, but you're supposed to spend all this time climbing and doing all this stuff. Somebody on the internet literally posted a video where they placed a bed, stood on it, and then summoned an enemy that also has this tornado ability, and the tornado ability launched the bed with Zelda on it across the map, and she conveniently landed on top of that mountain you're supposed to end up at.
Oh, the second I saw the bed stuff, I'm like, speedrunners are going to have a field day with this.
The crazy amount of fun stuff you can do, because you'll get stuck in a dungeon where it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to press that button on the other side of this wall and I can't walk through the wall? But you don't just summon stuff in front of you. You get the ability to like hold down the summon button and actually fire that summon like in front of you as an energy, and then it'll pop up like halfway across the screen and then appear. Like there's so much different stuff you can do. As well as if you press the X button on the controller, you actually can grab things and move them. So you may be able to just, move boxes, but you can also just have an enemy in front of you, grab them, drag them over water, and then let go and drop them in the water and kill them. Or maybe you'll actually move them and have them land on that button you're trying to get to. There's so many different things you can do in this game, and they really put a lot of effort into figuring out how to make it old school Legend of Zelda that people would love from like the 80s and 90s with the brand new Tears of the Kingdom feel of being open and like have fun and just do your thing. So that is amazing. The characters are amazing. They've got a lot of nods to the old and the new school. A lot of quality of life improvements. The spin for getting grass. Normally Link had to like slice and cut it with his sword. The R1 button on the controller is this little spin Zelda does. And you can do it whenever you want. And it actually destroys grass and everything as you go through it. So it's this huge, like, you wouldn't know it's a quality of life upgrade until all of a sudden you do it once and it's like, oh, I can never play an old Legend of Zelda now because that's the best way to just take out grass, right?
Yeah.
I can't give this game a perfect score. I can only give it like a 5.5 out of 6. And the only reason I'm taking that half point away is because of the performance. If anybody played the Link's Awakening remake, it was very much like all over the place with frame rate. Like it would be 60 FPS in one area, and then you'll turn a corner and there'll be like too many enemies or something on the screen, and it would fall to 30 FPS. And this happens in this game, in the overworld specifically, a lot. And it's very noticeable and it's very jarring because, like, again, you'll be moving through the overworld at 60 FPS, go into a town, and all of a sudden the FPS drops down to 30, and you feel that. But then you walk a little more right, there's a few less characters on the screen, and it jumps back up to 60. And it's like, like all of a sudden it's like, feels like the game sped up and then it slows down. And the crazy part, and Digital Foundry actually was the one that had mentioned this, and I tried it out. When you stand still, even in a 30 FPS area, the game turns back to 60 FPS and you can move the camera around in 60 FPS, even with all the characters and everything on the screen. But then you move the character and you just feel the game like go to half speed at 30 FPS. So it is a little jarring, but honestly, it really didn't take away from the game experience for me because it is only in the overworld and when it's crowded. When you're in dungeons, when you're in battles where any of this would actually really matter, it is a solid 60 FPS because the dungeons obviously have a lot less stuff going on. So there is that performance. Some people do notice it. Some people don't care because they're like, this is already just a Switch game that I'm playing on a plane. Like the fact that when there's a lot of characters on the screen, like that just feels Super Nintendo. Like that's just how it goes. But yeah, so I do have to take that half point away. But it is a really, really, really fun game. And I beat it. Switch doesn't tell you the exact many hours you play, but it said over 15 hours. And I know that the next one says 20 hours or more. So I know I played somewhere between 15 and 20 hours. So it's can be relatively short, quote unquote. You don't have to put like Tears of the Kingdom like 70 hours in it or anything like that. But if you do want it to be a lot longer, I only had 14 out of 20 hearts. There is so many like heart pieces to find, as well as you can find all the echoes in the game, like all the things that you can actually copy and then be able to like have show up in the game. So there's strong enemies you can defeat and then be able to summon them, objects, that kind of stuff. As well as this game has side quests. I don't know if really there was a lot of side quests and stuff. I guess Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild had some, but it was weird seeing a Legend of Zelda like this where like NPCs would have a little notification above them that they actually have a side quest that you can do, and you'll get like items or money or something for completing them. Some of them are easy, some of them are a little more involved, but it's actually pretty cool that they even have all of that in the game too. So I could probably keep this going another 15, 20 hours if I really wanted to. But I mean, I finished it and I have too many games to play. So I was like, I got what I wanted out of it. But highly, highly recommend. Highly.
I got like 2 questions for you on this one. One is like, what are the dungeons like? Because one of the problems I had with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild is that like there wasn't a lot of dungeons and a lot of like new items to pick up. Like, does the dungeons feel more like A Link to the Past, or does it not?
Very much like A Link to the Past.
Okay.
There's, I think, 6 dungeons, like main dungeons in the game. So it's not like 8 or 10 or any of the higher numbers I know some Zeldas have had. But it does have 6. And then plus there's also like a final area. There's a tutorial, like prologue area kind of idea. But the main dungeons where it's like you got to figure out how to get in there and do stuff. And then once you're in there, work your way to a boss and mini boss and all that kind of stuff. There was 6 of them and they were very old school.
Nice.
The only thing I would say is that the game, you don't learn abilities. You know how like Link had to get an item to learn to swim
you get like the
and all
bomb
that?
and use the bomb, like use the bomb in the bomb dungeon,
And here Zelda begins the game with the ability to jump and the ability to swim right away. So like this stuff, the whole where it's like, oh, you can't get there because you don't know how to swim yet or anything like that, non-existent. It's more that you may not have the required echo, like something you'd need to summon because it's like, oh, there's a torch here. You need to light it on fire. You need to be able to summon something that's either made of fire or can create fire to light this torch to open this door. So it was very nice having it where I saw some water. My instinct was like, I need to avoid this because I'll drown. I didn't get the flippers or whatever A Link to the Past had. And then no, I actually fell in and you have the ability to swim and dive right from the beginning. So it's nice that the basic things you didn't have to learn. It was all about like those echoes and stuff, which was much more satisfying when you finally figured out one of 30 ways to light a torch or something.
Yeah, my second question was about the echoes and using like enemies to fight other enemies. Do you find like for lack of a better term, like the AI is good at kind of assuming what you want it to do? Or because I was just watching the clip that Adam put up there and like they summon like a moglin or something like send a creature and it just went and ate the roast beef that the other ones were eating. Like, is it pretty smart or is it kind of like annoying? Like, no, like don't like go for the bad guy. Don't, like go for the main boss. Don't go for the like the little henchman.
I do find the AI actually to be pretty smart. If it was like out of 10, I would say it's like 9 out of 10 quality.
Okay.
Because just like in Legend of Zelda, you can aim, like usually it's like R or L2 or something, and you lock on. If you've locked on to an enemy when you summon it, you've already told that enemy that's who you're going to go attack.
Okay.
In the clip where that moblin was going and eating that meat specifically is for moblin monsters. They can't resist it.
Okay.
So the whole idea is that if you're going to fight moblins, you shouldn't summon a moblin because it's not, they're going to end up in the same spot. You should summon a different monster or something like that. So there's a little bit of strategy too, which is
like a rock, paper, scissors kind of strategy to it.
Yes. Yeah. Because there'll be some enemies that have a shield and or even armor. You'll summon those snakes, whatever they're called in the game. And the snakes don't do damage. You just hear the clink of them hitting the armor and nothing happens. Swipes a sword and like the 4 snakes you summoned are all killed in one swipe. So it's about figuring out what enemies you should summon when fighting other enemies and stuff like that, which is, plus you can also still turn into that girl Link version of Zelda, fire off some arrows and a sword and stuff like that. If you find it's a powerful enemy, I would quickly do that, take it out, learn how to summon that powerful enemy, and then now I'm going to start using that going forward type of thing. So yeah, and there was there is hundreds of different echoes, whether they're objects or enemies, and different levels of them too. Like, it is a lot. You still probably only use like 20 to 30 of them regularly, but still, whatever you want to get used to using, you have those options.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely one on my list to play once I get through. Once I get through Star Wars. I have Star Wars Astrobot, and I'd like to get into Warhammer too. So I don't know how that it's gonna work out, but it's on my list to play. So
nice. Is that what you've been playing, Star Wars?
Oh yeah. I've been playing through Star Wars and Astrobot. So I am probably 4 or 5 worlds, like not worlds but levels. Like I've beaten the one I'm on right now. Is I'm doing the parrot, I think. I did the iguana or the chameleon or whatever. So now I'm on like the last one.
Oh yes. But
yeah. So I'm doing that. I'm working my way through that. Liking that, but yeah, Star Wars is my primary game, and I am still loving that game. I've realized I was playing it, and I'm like, I've spent so much time on this, and I've not even touched the story yet. Like I've just been doing random shit for people, and I'm loving it. But I'm kind of getting that like fatigue of like, okay, like I've done enough side quest stuff. Like it's starting to get repetitive, and now I'm going into the main missions, and I'm like, holy crap! Like I'm still loving this game, and now I'm enjoying it even more because I'm doing like the top tier quality stuff. So yeah, I'm thoroughly loving this game. Feeling like Star Wars, still loving it. Still like the characters are awesome, the story's awesome. I have nothing but great things to say about Star Wars. So
nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
I think you're gonna like it once you get into it, Chris.
Yeah, basically once I see like it's on sale on the PS5, like that first 20% off or whatever Ubisoft will do, just because I have so many games I'm already playing that I'm gonna grab it
man,
and
just wait till February. It'll be like 70% off.
Don't sleep on it, Chris. You're a Star Wars fan. You love it.
It's true. I am a Star Wars fan.
I would say it's up there with like Fallen Order and everything like that. Like they're different games and they have different benefits and strengths. Like I think the one thing that this game does better than Fallen Order is world building. Like I love the planets a lot more, and like there are more characters. It feels more like Star Wars than Fallen Order does.
Nice.
So
nice.
But you know who doesn't like Star Wars Star Wars Outlaws? Apparently most people. This game is struggling. So much so that Ubisoft is in a tailspin. And that brings us to this week's top of the show. We're going to be talking about Ubisoft and everything that's going on with that dumpster fire. We've got some interesting opinions here, and I thought this would be a good conversation. I am somewhat of a Ubisoft apologist, I think is how Adam would probably describe me. Adam, on the other hand, absolutely cannot stand Ubisoft. And Chris, once again, sits somewhere comfortably in the middle. So I thought we could kind of talk about it this week. Where I want to start is I want to start with the reception of Star Wars Outlaws and the reaction it's had at Ubisoft. So I think they said Star Wars Outlaws has sold like something like only 1 million copies, which once again, weird to say that 1 million copies is not a success, but yeah.
So it's a PlayStation it probably took to build it.
Right?
That's a PlayStation greatest hits.
But I want to bring up a comment that Yves Guillemot said in his, like they did like an internal investors call. And one of the things that he brought up, which I thought was interesting and something we could talk about, was he was talking about game reception and reception to Ubisoft games. And he says, in today's challenging market and with gamers expecting extraordinary experiences, delivering solid quality is no longer enough. And I heard a lot of people kind of give shit about it, but I think there's an argument here that are gamers' expectations too high? So for me, like I'll start this off, like I think he's got a point. Like the idea of what we're expecting now from games is a lot. Like we expect high frame rates, high graphical fidelity, like no bugs. We want, a long experience. We've been like vocal on this podcast about, making shorter games, but like there's an argument for like how long a game is, like there's a lot that's to be expected of games, and I don't see anywhere that gamers are willing to make a sacrifice. We don't want to pay more for games. We don't want, to sacrifice on fidelity. We don't want to sacrifice on frame rates. Like, do we as gamers expect too much? And I think we do. Like, I think if you think of where we were in PS2, PS3 era, we were okay with games like not being perfect. We were okay with the graphics being good, but they didn't have to be mind-blowing every time. It didn't have to be this thing where every game had to look better than the last. It was an idea that like, hey, there's a certain range that we expect. And I feel like that's kind of gone away. And everything has to be better than what was before.
I'm curious what Adam's about to say.
Yeah,
I was
so
like,
into
should I wait for Chris to say his fence sitting topic before I do anything here? But so first off, I don't believe that gamers are picky to the extent that they're probably referring to. What I think they mean is that they're trying to appease gamers on different spectrums. The problem is you're never going to please all of them. Some people just want really, really good graphics. Some people just want the frame rate to be really, really solid. Some people just want 100+ hours of gameplay. Some people just want, it to be not a buggy mess. Like, there's very few people that want every single one of these and expect every single one of these. That's the difference too. I don't think everyone's expecting a game to be 4K with ray tracing running at 120 frames per second, no bugs, 100 hours of gameplay, and I only got to pay $60 for it. I think we're all relatively well trained, apart from, the hyperbolic field of social media trolls that are basically, probably what Yves Guillemot is referring to. But like, for the most part, yeah, I want games to not be a bug-infested mess, and I want them to run okay, and I also want to get my money's worth. If that's picky, then Yves, you should probably get out of the business, because that's always been like that. The difference is there's more of us, and there's more games out there that hit that seal of approval, especially in the indie scene, so we know what a good game looks like now, compared to when we were 5, didn't know any better, and there was maybe every month like one good game, and then all year there were like 3 great games.
And we only got one for Christmas.
Exactly. You had to learn to like the games that you had when we were kids. Whereas nowadays, just go on Steam. If you don't like something, there's 2,000 other things to replace your attention if you need it to be. So I don't necessarily say that picky is the right thing. I think it's just a case of, to appease a wide range of audiences, you have to check enough boxes that are almost not feasibly possible. Especially when you're talking the games with the budgets that they have. Whereas I say at points in the recap that'll come out on Friday where, because I'm talking about, like, say, Ghost of Yote is one of the topics about how they're trying to change the open world being less repetitive. And one of the biggest things I said is, like, we as gamers have gotten so used to massive open worlds that the second that it gets pulled back, we all of a sudden think we're being robbed of content. But the reality is what we actually are being robbed of is dead air. But we haven't adjusted to that yet. So they may think of that as us being picky about it because we're voicing our concerns about it. The reality is we've been exposed to the same thing for so long that the second any part of it gets taken away, that we think something's being lost, when the reality is if we consistently got, like, let's say 25% less map in every game, we wouldn't notice in 3 years. But it's just because we're so used to massive maps that it becomes a less of a thing. Just like now we're getting used to games that are always 60 frames, or they're, at one point used to be relatively bug-free for games that were actually Game of the Year nominee quality. Whereas now, anytime a Digital Foundry video comes out and we hear that it's a buggy mess, we go, oh, great, so it's not going to be a game worth my time for a nominee this year. Good to know. Like, that's really what the opinion is now.
I was expecting you to be so much more angry.
Oh, I can work my way up.
It's early. It's early in the podcast, Chris. It is early. You got time.
Well, the reason I'm shocked is because I thought I was on the fence, but that exactly what Adam just talked about is exactly what I was going to go into this with. I was going to come in and say you're kind of both right in the sense of whatever, but no, it's that I truly do think it's that Ubisoft thinks that all of the gamers, they have to appeal to them. That's 100% it, because
they also think that all the gamers share the same opinion instead of it being a bunch of niches.
Exactly. Yeah. They think it's just like this one giant pile of people, and they are all demanding, like, no, we want the 4K Assassin's Creed that's 120 FPS and ray traced and this and that. But they're trying too much to appeal to everybody. Because me personally, I have some friends that care about ray tracing above all else. I have some friends that care about graphic fidelity above all else, and they don't care if the game is 20 FPS. I have friends that literally care how many hours a game is in length. They don't even really care what the game is. They're checking the hours before if they'll even enjoy the gameplay. And these are people I know in real life. This isn't even just people I've seen online. So, like, to try and appease everybody, that's how you end up with a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which appeals kind of to everybody, which kind of makes it appeal to nobody perfectly, because nobody's getting the exact one thing they want out of it, except maybe like if you need a game to be 120 hours, because that's one was freaking long.
That was too long.
Way too long. But then, like, that's where there's an issue. So there are people that maybe wanted that, but a lot of people felt burnout from it. It's like, I don't really want that. So then they try Assassin's Creed Mirage. They're like, oh, every gamer doesn't like Valhalla. Every gamer will probably like Mirage instead, and we'll make it a little cheaper. And then there was like me and Kaylan, I know you, like, we loved it. It was smaller. It was like,
It was great.
this is a great Assassin's Creed. We finally went back. And it didn't sell as well because then some people saw it and was like, oh, it's a cheaper, smaller Assassin's Creed. This must be lower in quality. This doesn't seem like the 4K blah, 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 blah that I want. And now they're not getting it. So it's that Ubisoft isn't creating different games for the different genre of people like, say, indie games do, because you'll have the pixel game. You'll have the game that looks very, very pretty in a very cool art style and is kind of short. Or you'll have that big open sandbox game that's kind of forever and that kind of stuff in hours. But those indie developers know they're like aiming for gamers that would enjoy that game, where Ubisoft is trying to create a game they're going to make massive amounts of money on by appealing to everybody. And I think that is impossible. I don't think it's necessarily that the gamers are ridiculous. I think it's that the gamers have the one thing they care about in a game. And maybe, yeah, online, some of them are vocal where it's like, oh, wow, at 4K and no ray tracing, garbage game is garbage. Like, there are some of those, but I think
you can't even parse out what's real or not, too. Like, people will literally say something just to get a rise out. So you never know if,
100%.
oh, game drops from 60 frames to 59, a couple of points in the game, trash game. It's like,
yeah,
come on.
Yeah, they're still selling so many copies. So clearly that's not the main thought there, right? So
Yeah, I think one thing though that I want to kind of jump on is like the second part that he said is where he says like delivering solid quality games is no longer enough. And you kind of touch on that a little bit, Chris, where you're like, hey, they did it at Valhalla, bloated, oversized, no one liked it. And then they pivot to Mirage, right? And Mirage does, like, you and I both agree, Mirage is a great game. It's scaled back a little bit of like the scope. Like, it, if I remember, it wasn't a huge buggy mess. Like, it was pretty reliable in terms of how it delivered in terms of performance.
Like, even when I play, like, as much as I didn't play very much of it, I enjoy what was there of it. I was just like burnt out and didn't want to do it.
But like, so the thing is, like, that to me is solid quality game, and it doesn't get any credit. Like, it doesn't get any traction, right? Like, I don't see anyone talking about it, you know, a year later. Like, even 6 months later, it was kind of ignored. Same with, you know,
but is that because of the game, or is that just because of the track record and people's overall burnout of the series?
Maybe, but then if you look at something like Prince of Persia, Lost Crown, where that was a game that, you know, I really liked. It was a big change up to the Prince of Persia series. It's a fantastic Metroidvania, and I've not encountered any sort of problems with that game. Once again, smaller scale, you know, not going for super high quality, like 60 FPS, 40, you know, or 60 FPS, 4K resolution. Like, it's a solid performing game with a unique art style. And it's a niche game that doesn't get a lot of traction. So I feel like Ubisoft is in a position that no matter what they do, they constantly just get shit on. And I don't think it's a fair assessment for them. I'm not here to say that they are a perfect studio. They're not a perfect developer. But what, like, I think they do is they do interesting games. And now that they're like, they did milk their franchise of like, climb the tower, see all the points of interest, and go check them out. But like, they invented that, they revolutionized that, and then it got bloated, and everyone else started doing that, and then we got stale and tired. And when they course correct, they're still getting crapped on. Like, I think of something like even Star Wars Outlaws. Like, they got rid of the go to the tower, get all the markers. Like, now it's more organic, where you have to go and you have to like, the gameplay has changed where you have to go and discover things to do and to kind of find your own interest points. And no one's like talking about that. Like, Star Wars is getting shit on again because it doesn't look good. We don't like the character design. Like, there's really nothing wrong with Star Wars Outlaws. And yeah, everyone's saying, yeah, wait on this. It's a 7 out of 10 game. Like, I don't know what Ubisoft needs to do or what a Ubisoft game would look like that is a 9 out of 10 at this point. I don't think Ubisoft can get that. And so I think that there is an argument by Guillemot where he says, like, solid quality is no longer enough. Like, for it to get that 9 or 10 has to either come from Nintendo or like be a FromSoft game. Like, it's hard. Like, I can't think of the last 9 out of 10 that came from like a third party studio. Like it seems like it's coming less and less, and our expectations are too high. That something has to be of Nintendo quality or like Sony published first party studio for it to get a 5/10. Like I think of a lot of the games that I played this year that were really good and that just get passed off as a 7 out of 10. I think of Flintlock. I really like that game. A solid, well designed game with a cool concept, cool story. 7 out of 10, right? Like I think a lot of great games are getting overlooked because they're just not like getting attention because either one, our expectations are high and we don't want to do anything that's not a 9 or a 10, or we don't think that just solid is good enough for a game anymore. When I think of something like Fable, what would Fable look like today, right? Would Fable, if it got released today, would it get the same praise as it did? Because Fable is a solid game that is not amazing in today's standards, but like, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. No, go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm going to be way longer, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll say my then. Yeah, because I think there is also a point that you're making here, Kaylan, that is kind of striking me because it's besides also indie games, because I would give indie that they do have their markets and people will give indie games like 10 out of 10 for like Balatro and it's just a card game. Like they're like fans of indie games, I think they're kind of to the side.
It's a separate ecosystem. It's a separate ecosystem. We're talking like triple A kind of.
Yeah. Realm. I think you might be right in the sense that it's like people have seen Assassin's Creed so long, it's like no longer special. It's become I was going to say Swiss Chalet, but I don't know if everybody would get that reference. But it's like it's become just the chain restaurant of gaming where it's like the same thing over and over. And even when they change it, like Mirage to Valhalla, two very different games, much smaller in size, but like, I mean, it's still the same idea in the sense that it's like go, search, assassinate, stand on a tower, look around, like still very similar. And I think that if you do the same thing, or have even just the same franchise and try and do something different, but it's still the same franchise, people are, I don't even think it's burnt out. It's just they've built their opinion about the company and like that's now the opinion. So, you know, I know what Assassin's Creed was. It was revolutionary on the PS3, but they've done so many, you know, they keep pumping out the same thing. That to me is now a 7 out of 10. That's how I personally look at most Call of Duty games that were coming out for a while, or, you know, Madden or something like that. Yeah, it's the same game being pumped out. So even if it's good or they do change something, I've already pre-done my opinion that, yeah, it's a Madden game. There's nothing they can do to make me think it's a 9 or a 10 out of 10 because all the other Madden games, you know, I kind of eventually became a 7. So that must be it forever. And I think Ubisoft and other publishers are unfortunately, Ubisoft especially, I think, they're kind of getting hit where it's not just like one of their game franchises, it's them as a developer, because they only really have so many franchises, right? It's not like Nintendo where they could surprise us by putting out a new F-Zero game or something where they've got like 30 different IP, or even Sony. You know, Ubisoft just has their core 5 or 4 different IPs basically that they're putting out that people actually would play and are considered AAA. So yeah, I think there might be some truth to what you're saying in the sense that, yeah, gamers have predetermined kind of their opinion, and that opinion is it's a 7.
But I think it's the idea that like we won't touch a 7. Like we see it now with like IGN game scores where it's like if it's a 7, it's like a pass. And like there's gems to be found in the 7s, and like we are quick to dismiss solid games because they're not amazing, they're not great.
And that's not necessarily a gamer issue so much as it's an issue with the industry as a whole. It's a trend that we kind of have to fix either internally ourselves or that the reviewers need to do. So I was writing down a list of points too, so thanks Chris for giving me a sense to do some stuff. The first thing in relating to this is games that are no longer getting a 9+. There are quite a number of them. We just don't see them because they're not AAA games. That is the main issue, is that AAA games are not getting 9s. And I can give a pretty honest reason for that. It's because indie games are way more likely to get that because the people that are reviewing indie games want to review those games. Whereas people that review AAA games are being given those games to review. you're seeing way more outlets that are covering those games, which means there's people with a bunch of people on staff, some of which who don't fucking like the game they're being given, but have to do it for their job, so they half-ass a review, put out usually a 7 or 8 because that way it pisses off nobody, and there's no questions asked. No one gives a 10 anymore, I don't think, because the game, like, I originally would have thought, you know, it's because that nobody wants to give a game a 10 because they don't want it to be calling a game perfect. That's not true. I give 10s all the fucking time. I don't give a shit. The thing is I don't have to worry about backlash from people online when I give something a 10. The people that work at IGN, if they give it a 10, two things will happen. They will get trolled to shit, and they will get a bunch of different people from PR executives all around the rest of the industry going, well, why did they get a 10? We gave you guys this. We gave you an early access key for this. Why aren't we getting this kind of coverage? So they're dancing around it as best that they can as a business compared to ex-YouTuber who doesn't have to give a fuck about any of that and just says what he wants. We give 6s all the time on the show out of 6, and we'll give 3s all the time out of 6 because we have no one to be beholden to, whereas IGN does. GameSpot does. They have to worry about that. So I think the reviewing scores is less about gamers and more about the industry as a whole, because there is so much politics that happen in the background that we're not aware of that we have to consider as well. And also, like I said, most of the time when a AAA game comes out, the person reviewing that game probably shouldn't be reviewing that game because it's not their thing. They don't just go, oh, it's a Call of Duty game, let's give it to our guy who's a big shooter guy. They will literally pass it to just X person who's available at that moment. So there's a lot of reviews that I don't think are putting their best foot forward either.
I want to touch base just to clarify something. I'm not saying that like it's a matter that we're getting too many 7s now. I'm not talking about the reviews, but I'm talking about we as consumers, when we see a 7, we'll dismiss it right off without looking at.
Because we're being told by the companies that are reviewing these games that that's what that means. If they did it properly by giving a game a 5 when it's supposed to be a 5, this wouldn't be an issue. But because they're beholden to the industry, they can't.
Well, I think because like I was watching an episode of another podcast, Play, Watch, Listen, and they were talking about the review scores. And the reason why so many games get a 7 is because a 7 for them denotes that it's functional, because they have to go with like the idea that a 5 is not a middle of the ground game, because a 1 would be a game that is broken mess that you can't complete and beat, right? A 3 is a game like Gollum where it's like, you know, you can play it from end to beginning, but it is buggy, it is problematic. Like they leave that 5 or 6 as a that for like below for the games that aren't working. Same way as like a paper, right? A 50% is a pass, but a 49 is a fail. You don't have it that 50, like a 50% is, oh, you're middle of the road. Like it's, if you're below that 50, that is, you've not met the minimum criteria. Then it becomes like a B is average. And that's kind of how I look at it with review scores, is that the reason why most games are 7 is that, yeah, they're functional, they're competent, but they're not doing anything like amazing. They're not going above and beyond. They are average, right? And that's why I think we see so many 7s. And that's what she was kind of making the argument for. And it kind of made sense. So I think that's why you see so many 7s, but it's more for us of like, hey, it's a game's a 7. Okay, well, I'll wait for a discount or something like that. Maybe I'll get to it eventually. We're dismissive.
Well, I mean, the way I even look at
games.
it now is that if I see a game that has a 7, I go, if that's not for me, if it's like a JRPG getting a 7, I'm still curious because I know it's in my wheelhouse. But if it's like if it's a strategy game and it's a 7, I'm not touching it because I'm not into those games that much. So I think it's just really dependent on the way that other people use it too. But again, we've also been taught, because again, Chris, in one of our friends' Discords, we literally have people, every time IGN posts a review, it goes up. It's them that we always use. It's never anything else. And what does IGN always say? Basically, like the worst of the worst is a 6 and the best of the best is a 9. You never see a 10, you never see a 5. So when you see a 7, you go think, oh, it must be just slightly above shitty then, because 6 is as low as they ever put their scores. So that's on the reviewers for that. And it's on us as gamers to then recognize the pattern change, because we're just going based off of what the patterns are, because we're very patternistic in the way that we think too. So if people, because here's the thing, my hot take is that more games should be 5s, because so many, like, they're just going off like, oh, well, if it's just like, if it's like passable in terms of its quality, like if, you know, it's at least functional, it should get a 5. No, That's not what a 5 is. A 5 is average. That means it is just perfectly average. 7 should mean it's very well designed, does a few things well, but there's a bunch of things that they didn't do right or they could have done better. But 7 apparently just means it's a game. That's what a 7 is now. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think when you just said like 7 just means it's like it's a game. I think that's how a lot of us are seeing that.
Because that's how
like
they're
Kaylan,
reviewing them.
Yeah, and it's like Kaylan when you're saying like, oh, it's a B. Like it's true because I think a lot of people look at it in the same scoring system they use in school, where they get back results for a test. If you got a C, it was like, wow, I didn't really do very well. If you got an A, it was like, wow, that's great. And if you got a B, it was like, I am average. Like that was kind of, at least back when I was in school, which is a long time ago, but that was still kind of the way they were kind of promoting it to us, even as kids. And I think that's how a lot of people see games. And now it's like, probably because there's so many games out there. There's so many games out there.
You don't have to care about a 7 when you know there's so many other 8s and 9s above it.
Yeah, like if it's like, oh, that's only a B, well, then maybe I don't need to buy that game, or I can wait on it because there's a 9 and I'll go play that instead. Or I'll just go play Balatro again because that's what always happens to me.
And if I'm being honest, if I see a 7, and especially if it's from a major outlet, I go, oh, so it's a 5, but they can't say that. Yeah. That's honestly the also opinion that I've gotten over the years, and that's my own bias. Because I look at a 7, and if it's a AAA game, usually I go, oh, so it's actually really bad, but they can't say that because they don't want to lose their free stuff.
True. There is that too. Yeah, it's tough because like it's like if there's so many people in the world and everybody was single, all of a sudden looking average wouldn't be good enough because everybody's gonna just be like, that doesn't. Well, there's all these 9s over there. Why would I bother with you? And that's how people are looking at games. There's so many of them. So I think that does kind of play into it.
Well, it even brings back our conversation of how, like, because now the AAA industry is also having a real bad down period, that now that so many more people are paying attention to indie, it makes that market even harder to penetrate because there's so much other stuff that people are paying attention to. I mean, again, you look at Balatro or Animal Well, like, there's potentially 2 indie games that are going to get nominated for Game of the Year this year. And and I'm not saying this because it's bad for the indie industry. I'm saying for the Game Awards, if there are 2 indie games nominated for Game of the Year, that's a bad look on the industry because that means the people with the most money are not holding their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
I think you guys inadvertently came around and are agreeing with what Guillermo's saying, and that he's saying solid quality is no longer enough.
So then they should not make just solid. They need to make better.
Yeah.
Like so maybe that statement itself is true, but he's putting the onus on us that it's our fault, which is not true.
No, and I don't think he's like. I think what he's saying is that like what his quote is saying is it's not saying it's our fault, but what he's saying is that gamers are expecting extraordinary experiences. So he is right in that our expectations are very high.
Well, it depends on what his what's your definition of solid? Because my definition of solid is not a copy and paste, which is what 90% of Ubisoft games are to me.
Yeah, so your argument is that a solid game is a unique experience, so you have to be unique every time.
No, that's not
true. To be a solid experience. But that's what you just said.
No, I said it's not copy and paste.
Yeah, which would be a unique
You can
experience.
make an Assassin's Creed game that's not necessarily unique, but at least does some things differently. Mm-hmm. Like, unless you mean unique literally, like if there has to be differences, sure, fine, then that's what I mean. But like, let's be honest, what's the difference between Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4? Nothing. Other than the characters in it. Nothing.
No, I agree.
So that's the problem, is he's complaining about a problem that his own company is doing with their design choices. If they would just slightly adjust and better some of the games, and by better, I don't mean make the world bigger. That's not what better means. But, like, they're not, like, Star Wars Outlaws, from what I've seen and in terms of like how it performs and what it does, it doesn't feel like it's actually doing anything better so much as it's taking away some of the stuff that wasn't working. And that's not necessarily better either, because it's just, if you're pulling out the bad things but not replacing it with good things and you're just taking out the bad, like, okay, so there's less pain points, but it doesn't necessarily make the experience better. I think it's just a case of like, you know, I look at the difference, say, between Watch Dogs 1 and 2. Watch Dogs 1 is extremely pointlessly dark. It is void of story, voice acting sucks, and there's just no life to that game. Watch Dogs 2, fucking miles different, because it decided to be like, hey, why don't we make the game fun? Why don't we actually have a story that is engaging? Why don't we actually put in, you know, a sort of vibe to it that doesn't make it seem like we're trying to be like dark and dreary all the time, because every fucking game at that point had to do that. So sure, like there is a sense of, you know, yeah, there has to be a uniqueness to it, but also at the same time, like, hey, maybe like, I don't know, try to do, you know, a little bit of like work on something instead of just going like, hey, let's just do the same thing we've always done, put a different coat of paint on it and call it a day.
I see what you're saying, but then I also look at like other studios that don't get that same. Like we look at Breath of the Wild and look at Nintendo. Nintendo does the same thing with like their Mario games. Like they innovate a little bit.
But then my counter with, because I was actually going to talk about that with one of your other points where you talked about how well they've been putting out a good Assassin's Creed game with Mirage, and Outlaws is a much better game. Why are they not being talked fondly about it? I can tell you why. Take a look at what Capcom did. Capcom was literally dumpster fire for 10 years almost, because Mega Man sucked, Resident Evil was terrible, like so much of their products were bad. And then Monster Hunter World came out, and then Resident Evil 7 came out, and then other games came out. And then now we're talking about Capcom fondly anytime a game comes out. Ubisoft doesn't get this treatment for putting out 2 slightly better games. They need to be much more consistent on many different games. Just being good at 1 open world game or 2 open world games doesn't mean anything. Now they have to come back with another like South Park, The Fractured But Whole. They need to come out with some more like, well, if Beyond Good and Evil 2 or 3 was what it was supposed to be, then there's that. Like they need to have a much more diverse library. Like, so the idea that Ubisoft isn't getting praise is because of the track record that Ubisoft's built. They need more than just a game or two to get out of it. The reason that companies like Nintendo and FromSoft, the reason that they're getting it is because they have a consistent track record. Whether or not you can say whether it's copy-pasted content or whether they're not really changing the guard much, that's fine, but they also haven't put out a bunch of bad games in a row. BioWare used to be the studio for me. No, nothing they could do was wrong. Jade Empire was amazing. Knights of the Old Republic was amazing. Mass Effect was amazing. Dragon Age was amazing. Then Andromeda came out. And then Anthem came out, and then Andromeda came out, and now no one wants to talk about BioWare right now.
Oh, Anthem.
And why is that? Because now they're on a losing streak. Ubisoft needs to be on a consistent winning streak in the same way that any sports team. No one talks about a 2-game winning streak. They talk about a 5-game winning streak. They talk about a 10-game winning streak. And if you're a team that's got 15, 20 wins in a row, you're going to be talked about like you're going to be the next champions. That's Nintendo.
Yeah. I think
that's a fair point.
Even though Nintendo does put out Legend of Zelda every few years, Mario every couple years. Actually, I guess Mario technically is like multiple times a year when you think about it. But it's like one of them is him driving a cart. One of them's him playing golf. One of them's him in a 3D platformer. One of them is him in a 2D platformer. And by the time the same type of Mario comes around, it's been like 6 years. And people are like...
also when a bad one comes out like Star Fox Adventures, it's okay. It was a 1-game losing streak and they're right back to normal again.
Yeah, and there's a new game like 2 or 3 months later, and it's like, oh, cool, like Breath of the Wild's here or whatever, right?
Like, look at how we're treating Sony right now. They're starting to get on that losing streak, and we're starting to go, you're not doing so well.
And then Astrobot, Astrobot's throwing a wrench in our anger towards Sony.
Like, okay, now we're like, okay, we'll see where it goes from here, and if they keep releasing good stuff again, it goes back in the good graces. But we're in that wary
that's
stage.
A fair point. Like
Ubisoft's in the wary stage.
Fanboy. Yeah. I just like, for me, I looked at like, you know, they have a couple wins and like, and I see what you're saying, like the streak there. But like I see like this whole like Ubisoft is on fire, and it almost seems like people are celebrating this, and I don't know if that's necessarily a positive reaction to have to this.
But I want to just attribute that to just being what fucking internet culture is now. We just want to see big corporations die. Like, there's a lot of us that are just because of let's be real. What's life like right now? Fucking dog shit. Housing is too high. Food's too high. Every streaming service under the sun is trying to make us spend $50 a month on everything. We're really tired of capitalistic billionaire corporations. So when some of these are in trouble, we're kind of okay with seeing a billionaire fucking getting shit.
Yeah. I think that
Like,
is a huge part there.
There's a lot of things I don't want to see people lose their jobs. But if somebody said Tesla was going to shut down tomorrow, I'm not going to lie, I'd throw a little bit of an internal party in my head.
Oh yeah. But it's true, because if you think about it, if like an indie developer who made a game and it's like one guy or girl made one game and that game fails and that gets published, people will feel sad and actually care, maybe even go and buy that indie game to try and support that developer, because it's like the underdog. It's an actual person, not a corporation. You hear about a corporation like, oh, Walmart's stock is down 9%. People are like, I don't fucking care. Good
Tiny
for you.
violins.
Like, yeah, and it is very much the culture right now where corporations, and in our defense, corporations are kind of fucking us left and right all the time. And I think that people see Ubisoft kind of the same way. It doesn't help that you take Ubisoft and a lot of these other developers and publishers. One, layoffs like crazy, so you care about the like 16,000 people laying off.
What was it? The sexual assault scandal?
The sexual assault, the Me Too movement that went through the frickin' game industry, and it turns out like everybody was an asshole basically at every single big AAA developer. Like, it was insane for a while, but it was like, okay, and then companies' responses, and Ubisoft's wasn't great when they had their debacle there. Like, there wasn't really like, oh, well, the CEO should step down or the CEO should say something or do something. And it was like a small moment 6 months later at E3 where they had a little thing about like respect and then left or something. Like, so people, I think, also just have these sour tastes in their mouth where it's like, listen, you kind of suck as a corporation or people sometimes. You better put out these big good games and then we'll forgive you, because that's how people are as well.
There are other companies that are probably doing just as much shady shit. I can't imagine like what Sony and Microsoft are doing. Well, I guess Microsoft's a bad example because we don't really have much good to say about them that much either. But like some of these companies, like, sure, if a story came out tomorrow that From Software, there's some shady shit going on in the office there, people won't really say much for the time being because they're pretty much kings, right? But if it came out tomorrow that Andrew Wilson of EA was caught like fucking like sexually assaulting a bunch of coworkers, we'd all be like, yeah, fuck that guy and fuck that company. Which, by the way, when are we going to be talking about saying nice things about EA? I don't think any of us are going to be doing that anytime soon. So I think it's a large part of like Ubisoft has had a long track record of not putting out amazing, like, honestly, like Ubisoft's not been on my radar since I want to say like the mid 2010s. And I remember those days because anytime they were at E3, I look forward to them more than anybody. Like, those are my favorite ones to watch. When Aisha Tyler was still hosting back then, I fucking loved those shows because they were great shows regardless of what the games they showed. But now they have a track record of they just put the same game out with a fresh coat of paint. Their CEO is a fucking asshole. The company itself has just been scandal after scandal of stories. And quite frankly, it's the worst possible time for this to happening because we are literally in a case where in the country below us, we are literally trying to keep a quote unquote billionaire out of the presidency. So we have a real not happy point with anybody making $1 billion or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And honestly, it's the internet. We like to shit on things more than we like to put them up.
What? That doesn't sound like the internet.
I mean, on this show,
like
actually, that's
Twitter.
a lie. We actually do. I do love to put stuff down a lot on this show. Who am I kidding?
You're not the brave
We're just
sunshine
not doing
of
like
this podcast,
Twitter
just so you
levels.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys bring up some fair points. Like, I still appreciate and I still like what Ubisoft does.
Dude, I
For me,
want them to be better. They're not there yet for me. That's all it really is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure
that's
for
fine.
other gamers, like, there's their side of it where they'll never touch them again. But like, until here's the thing: if they put out a Game of the Year nominee, that'll shut some people up real fast. So until they do that,
100%. Yeah, I think I'm also in the same area as you, Kaylan. Where like I still like a lot of the games that Ubisoft puts out. Like Outlaws, I still want to give it a go. The one issue I had with it was like the stealth, like you failing a mission and then you just fail it right away. I was like, oh, I don't like that, but they patched that apparently. So I'm ready to jump into that game. I just have a lot on the go gaming wise. Assassin's Creed, I was very excited for that, and obviously they made a delay on that one and stuff, but I like Ubisoft games. Maybe not as much Far Cry. Like I've only ever played Far Cry 3. I have to play the others. It's just not as much of my kind of franchise. But still, I like a lot of the games that they put out. And, I don't know. It seems like Ubisoft is trying to turn it around because there is some other stuff that they have done, like they wouldn't put games on Steam. They'd only put on the Epic Game Store for a year because it had like a higher cut that they'd get. Then they'd release the game on Steam a year later, and it wouldn't have all the features. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla has been on Steam for 2 years, and they just added achievements to Steam for that game. And it's like you already had achievements. They were on the like Uplay whatever launcher they had and Epic, but they're just not putting the effort in. And now it's like we're delaying Assassin's Creed. It's going to be on Steam day one. Star Wars Outlaws is coming to Steam in November as quickly as we can get it out. They added the achievements to, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I know that's just Steam, but they're kind of trying to do stuff to get rid of some of the also bad taste in the mouth kind of stuff that they've done, including like, I think they're getting rid of seasons passes or something they were saying, or getting rid of.
I think
it
was day one, the day one DLC stuff, like the day one, like the 3 day early stuff. I think they're getting rid of.
Yeah, like some of that stuff where it's like you're paying all this monetization because Ubisoft is like, oh, buy the regular standard gold ultimate or truly ultimate edition,
super gold platinum,
super gold platinum, $190 for this game that you can buy for $20 in like 6 months, like.
And I think that's a problem with Ubisoft right there too. Is I think like they are cannibalizing or they're losing their sales in the fact of how quickly they discount their games, right?
Yes,
because people see Ubisoft games are like give it 3 months, and I think one of the things that they probably have shot themselves is how quickly they discount that. There's no value in the game, and there's no benefit of buying early when it's going to go on sale so quickly. And I'm curious if you're going to see Star Wars Outlaws taking a while before it gets discounted.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll change that up. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, for me, like the way I'm going to kind of wrap it up is like
I feel like I got one more point too. Whenever you're done there, too.
Okay, you do it, then I'll do my.
Okay, I just want to say this. So like, here's the main reason why I think Ubisoft is really in dire straits right now. The last 3 games that they made that are not like your usual staples have been Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which did not get received well because it was just another fucking open world game with a new. It's Far Cry. Yeah. It's Far Cry Primal with a blue skin. Skull and Bones, which was just technically a Black Flag, just without any effort put into it. So that didn't do well either. And then you have X Defiant, which honestly I've heard many good things about, but they picked a market that is so out of the question oversaturated that they were never going to do well in. So anytime that they try to do anything new, we had the conversation a few episodes ago about Sony and all their different IP and what they're not using. Ubisoft, when they're trying to make new IP, go into fields that make no sense, or they just don't put the effort in.
Yeah, or they make it's a reskin.
And then anything they're working on going forward, I'm just looking at Wikipedia and what projects are known at this point. And apart from Shadows, Division stuff, Rainbow Six stuff, Prince of Persia remake, more Assassin's Creed. I love how it says Splinter Cell remake on the list, but I don't think that's true.
One day it's coming.
Yeah, that's good. That's coming.
It's all Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, and Tom Clancy stuff. They're not doing anything else. No wonder no one cares about them, because they aren't doing anything new, except when they try, they don't actually try. They just go after some other thing that's already popular where it's not going to work, because you can't pull people away from that stuff. So like the problem is they used to be the cutting edge. They used to be doing a lot of the cool new stuff. And then Watch Dogs happened, and they were like, oh, I guess we can't do new stuff anymore because no one likes it. No, Ubisoft, that's because you lied to us. That's why.
Well, maybe they'll come out with a new Just Dance and save the day,
That's the other problem. We need more crazy shows of that. Those are the good days. It was like the Kevin Butler of Ubisoft.
For me, and like the thought I was going to put it, like for me, and then like for Chris, Adam, I know where you stand with it, but like Ubisoft to me feels like the Titanic in the sense that it is this, was this really cool, awesome studio, and they're heading for an iceberg. And I think that they've just noticed the iceberg, and my only hope is that they can turn the ship before it strikes the iceberg. And that's kind of, I feel like we're in that moment right now, and I'm hoping that they can ride out the storm, because I see that they are, despite like the Wikipedia list that they have, like I feel like they are trying to right the ship, and I hope that they've given themselves enough time that they can rebuild. Like I don't want to see it get sold and then
I want Assassin's Creed Shadows to be a Game of the Year nominee. Like, as much as I don't care for the series that much, I want them to do good because it means the industry will do better. Because when Ubisoft was at its best, the industry had to be at its best because everybody else had to put their A-face on.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, they already have, talking about the Titanic, they're already working with James Cameron on Avatar. Ubisoft Titanic game of the year, maybe in another year. That could save
mean,
the day.
I mean, look, if they want to make a detective game on the Titanic or something like that, fuck it, I'm in.
No, it's a game where you play the iceberg.
It's a dating sim. It's a dating sim.
You know, you say that out loud. Someone's probably done that.
You start out in third class and you got to work your way to like start banging first class.
They don't use Leo's face. They just very similar, and his name's like Mio or something like that. Like just close enough.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see what you guys. What?
There's an itch.io game that literally is a dating sim where it's here's the tagline. You know the story of the Titanic, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Uncover a forbidden love between a lonely block of ice and a 52,310-ton British passenger liner. Fate brings them together, but what will they do when warned to stay apart? Experience a tale of love, heartbreak, and maritime negligence when their worlds collide. Literally.
Oh, man. Guys.
And the game is called Heart of Ice, an RMS Titanic dating simulator. So again,
guys,
you say that, but someone's clearly already put the work in.
I think you guys have a side quest one day. You guys could just do a let's play of this.
100%. Shoddy iceberg.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna wrap it up there. I think that's the best place to end it. If you're still watching, really appreciate it. Put a like and a comment. Let us know where you fall in this whole Ubisoft fiasco. Do you want to watch them burn? Do you hope for better days? Are you Ubisoft fanboy? Like, let us know. We really want to hear what your thoughts are on this whole scenario. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. If you're watching us anywhere else, please leave a review. Please leave a like, and subscribe. It helps all those algorithm AIs, robots know that we are the best podcast in the world. We know that. You know that. We just need to teach the AI that they know that as well. So please do that. And we will see you guys next week. Well, see these two next week. Maybe. We'll see. Bye for now.